It's Deceiving. A Datura trip report by the Pie-Eyed Piper. Posted to earwid.org September 1st, 2006. September 10th, 2005. Datura inoxia. 2 pods each, freshly picked. Each pod containing over 200 seeds. My boyfriend, £170, and I, £145, ate them in the early evening, and got really tired when it set in. Both fell asleep for a couple hours. I woke to find him looking under the baseboard heater with a mag light. He'd found a bunch of pills under there, but some of them weren't real, because they dematerialised when you picked them up. He also told me that our pet rat Baldwin, God bless your little tail, wherever you are, had found some other rats, but some of them looked sick, so I had to put them in the cage to keep them from contaminating anybody. Baldy was a free-range hairless rat. I looked, and sure enough, I saw 2 or 3 rats and a little black mouse in the cage. Then I noticed 2 more sleeping by the alarm clock. There were more burrowing through the laundry hamper, making the whole thing squirm around like crazy. Now, one of the important things to remember about any kind of Jimson weed is that a lot of the time that I'm high, I don't even know that I'm totally insane. It's like I forgot I took anything, and it seems perfectly natural for the world to suddenly appear like it does. Well, we came down a bit, and discerned that the sick rats were a paper towel, as well as a sock, some newspaper, etc., and we had a good laugh about it. September 11th, 2005. In this hallucinogenic garden of our eccentric neighbour also grew Datura stramonium. Unlike the beautiful inoxia, it had no semen scented, no kidding, white trumpets, and instead of the smooth leaves and less spiky pods, the plants were scraggly with worm-eaten pointy leaves, dark, flowerless, and the pods wore armour like so many hypodermic needles. I had to wear a glove to twist them off and scoop out the seeds. It looked pretty evil for a plant, and the seeds were more abundant per pod, smaller and darker, and tasted like battery acid as we chomped down at least 700 seeds apiece at about 8 AM. That, as you'll soon note, is far too much. Both C and I are very experienced with tripping. I started with acid and mushrooms at 13 and loved it. Then I went on to love peyote, mescaline, DXM, AMT, DMT, all the way to toad skins and Brazilian tree bark. Nothing could have prepared us for this one though. Again, we fell asleep, and once again, I woke second. This time C was talking on the phone to his mum on a screwdriver in the middle of the kitchen floor, surrounded by the inner workings of the coffee pot, trying to inject a spoonful of tobacco and smoking a butter knife, begging his mum on the screwdriver and I for a glass of water. Datura lets us confuse one object of even slightly similar size, shape, weight or personality with another object, often with strange results. I noticed the rats were back and mentioned it to C. He said yes. They'd come home about an hour ago and were seemingly in worse health than even before. In the cage was a rather gruesome sight. A white big shaved mother rat had been hit by a car or something and was all ripped apart on the back half, with a spine hanging out. In reality though, this was the hole in the sock one puts the foot in. I could tell by her laboured breathing that she was in agony. I did all I could do to hold back the tears while I begged C to put it out of its misery, as she gave birth to litter after litter of rotting, stillborn pinkies. This brought the maggots and flies, even some huge spiders. All those cliché tripping stories were coming true, but by then, we had no idea we were schizo, and forgotten that we had even taken anything. That Jimson weed could convince 2 adults of non-existent rats not once, but twice in 24 hours. We didn't know how, since we always kept the place tidy. That we ended up with such a pest problem was quite a bizarre thing. It was hard to keep track of how many people were in the apartment as well. Most of them I didn't even know. We agreed that the 2 smelly fishermen who had just left would not be allowed back in. I told the fan not to answer the door, and she said she'd give me a shot of dope, since there was all this coke piled sky high on the table. and I just couldn't get my dealer to listen to me to give me anything, or to pay attention to me when he was so small. He was so uncooperative that the more and louder I yelled at him, the smaller and more deformed he became, until I finally realised that he was a potato in the palm of my hand. The potatoes had pushed off the table by all the coke, and this immense jet-black hulk of a man weighing it out in featherweights. Nah, not potatoes. How could someone be so cruel as to cut off a rat's tail and arms and legs like that? I guess they weren't all dying though, because they were all still breathing and moving, and had many scars but no open wounds or blood. The old man and old woman in our bed were dying though. The woman had a bottle of Oxyfast. I told her I needed some as was dope sick, but she said I'd get no sympathy from her, even after all I was doing for them. She and her husband were so sick and dying I felt bad, and I let them boss me around in my own house so rudely, making me brush the teeth for them, cook, and bring them soup made of Datura seeds and lotion, ice water and cold compresses. I ended up shaving her legs with one piece of the inside of that Mr. Coffee that would never work again. The piece itself looked something like a razor. As I said, that would be a common mistake on this stuff. The landlord must have found out about the vermin because by the looks of all the people taking cover in the trash cans outside, they were going to smoke us out. C was on probation at the time with less than a week left, so either the cops or the landlord or the fire department or someone, C said, was going to fumigate us in a second. He put a pair of jeans on, then he put on another pair over those. I told him he had two, and he took one off again. He said hurry, and I said I couldn't move. I lay on the floor a little beat up, a blackish eye and split brow and lip. C had wanted to get me out of me, wanted to know where I'd hidden myself. "What did you do with Elle? I know she's in there," or something to that effect. Obviously no hard feelings about this. He didn't remember it, and I barely can either, but I had marks for a week or so. I couldn't move because I most likely had a concussion, so I told him to go on without me. Save yourself. Save yourself from the cops and poor Baldwin the rat, the only real rat in the place, from the pest control army that was now advancing on us from the front of the house, running hoses under the doors. You see the hoses flapping around with the pressure of the gas inside, hissing like snakes and whispering jumbled warnings and laughing at us. C put Baldwin on his shoulder and, no shirt, no belt, no socks, jumped out the window and down the fire escape. That was the last time we ever saw our beloved pet. A moment of sad silence. More and more people kept coming to my house. They'd usually knock on the door and I'd open it, and once I did, I couldn't get rid of any of them, even when I said I had to leave to go look for C, because hallucinations are just so damn uncooperative. You can't even physically remove them from your living room when your hand goes right through them. It's nuts. There was this little Quasimodo looking albino girl that I might have gone to school with in the hamper now, and she was getting eaten alive by the rats and maggots. I had to get ready and find a ride to the party. I met one girl, Jamie, who was homeless and on the road like I used to be. She also carried baby wipes in a satchel for when she couldn't get a shower, which she asked me for, and I felt bad refusing her, but I simply had to get everybody out so I could go find C. C, who took my morphine and supposedly went out to lunch with a bunch of girls and one of my ex-boyfriends from a long time ago, and would show up at the party and better not have given away my morphine by the time I got there. Jamie and I talked very closely for a while though, and found out we had a lot in common, even though she was dead, and I was just on a different plane of existence entirely. We could still smoke a joint together, and so we did in the bathroom. Then she packed up her bag, gave me a straight-through hologram hug, and utterly disappeared. We lived next to a supermarket. I went over there to see if anyone in the parking lot had seen C with my morphine, or had any morphine for that matter. Boy, am I lucky I didn't get arrested. I found out the party was closer than I thought. It was to be held almost right behind my house down by the railroad tracks. They were using the supermarket parking lot for the overflow. It was full of low-flying bats, birds, and tiny dinosaur-like things, all white or albino. I talked to the ATM machine. The automatic teller automatically told me all kinds of nonsense. Back at home, waiting for C and my non-existent morphine, I could see them all setting up the tents and getting the stages ready for the party, for the big show. It was practically standing room only out there. People, I believe, of all shapes and sizes and styles of dress were present, even some top hats and monocles, bustles and hoop skirts, as well as crazy African stuff and stilts. I doubted the humanness of some entities, including some with more than one head, but never doubted their reality. I was starting to get upset now, though. Not so much about the pills, but I was worried about C. It was getting dark now, and I walked away from the carloads and truckloads of people that were pointing at me, talking about me like, "Wow, what is that?" Now, it was just me and the ghost of Tommy Irving, someone I knew who had died just a couple months ago. I'd been asking questions from a telephone pole when he came up behind me and told me it wasn't going to talk back, but that I could talk to him if I wanted, like if I ever needed anyone to talk to about stuff. A little nicer than he usually was in real life. We walked and talked all the way down the street to the garden where we picked the pods. And then, almost 12 hours later, I then remembered that I took the Datura and that I'd been tripping this whole time. The road was flapping like a magic carpet. I could see animals and eyes and faces everywhere. Timmy said if we, as in me and C, were both tripping on the nightshade on the same night but at different places, I should be able to find him eventually. So, I closed my eyes and called to him. We are very close, not only in our relationship, but as tripping partners as well. We've often had mass hallucinations or communicated without speaking, so I had no doubt it would work. And then, he appeared in the Jimsonweed garden, kind of fading in and out like TV with bad reception. It was hard to see him, and it took all my energy just to get through long enough for Timmy to disappear, and for C to look at me with grave seriousness and say, "Find out if I have bail, now." So I knew he was in jail. He'd got arrested for allegedly going in the Thai restaurant, asking to drink the fish tank water and eat the fish itself, and then continuing on to Turner Street, climbing into the back seat of an unlocked car, and sitting there talking to the headrest until the police showed up. While he was in there, he thought it was me and his mum in the car, driving us all to this party. In the end though, they dropped the charges after he said he'd accidentally eaten a poisonous plant, and was just temporarily loony. I was crazy for about 2 to 3 days altogether, before all the posters finally stopped talking to each other, and I could no longer see that design in the carpet or ceiling that was squirming around anymore. Altogether, this may sound like a bad trip, but I wouldn't say it was entirely. It was too big of a dose and not the right setting, of course, and had the plants been more mature, we may well have kicked the bucket. I've tried it again twice more since anyways. The stramonium is stronger than the inoxia by far, though the inoxia gives a worse dry mouth and difficulty swallowing, unless I was just too high on the stramonium to notice anything. The visuals can tend to lean towards the gruesome and grotesque, but I think it's just a chemical, because I've heard the same from just about anyone that's ever done this stuff.